In the last video, maybe you already saw it. If I open up the console again and we inspect this Vue instance, we see a couple of properties here, which clearly weren't created by us. For example, children, which is an empty array, L, which clearly refers to this div, which actually represents our instance or represents our HTML code of this instance, and also data here and some other things. These are actually properties we can use. And whilst I won't go through all of them, some of them are also pretty self-explanatory and some I'll cover later when we come to components and more advanced objects, I want to go through some. Specifically, I want to talk about $L, $data, and $refs here. So let's have a look at that. $L is pretty clear. It refers to our template. It refers to our HTML code of that instance. So as you see, it refers to this div, and it is this native HTML element. Nothing special about it. So this is how VueJS keeps track of what our HTML code is or where this instance lives. $data is an object which holds our data properties. This is another way of accessing the data from outside. So while I can access the data by directly typing VM1 title, I could also type $data title because $data is the data block we passed here accessible from outside. I can prove this. If I create a new variable, data, and set this equal to exactly the properties we have here, like this. And then here I set data equal to data, now referring to this variable I created outside of that instance. I can now down here check if the data stored in the $data property created by VueJS equals the data variable I created up here. Well, let's see this in action. If I hit Control and remove that semicolon here. So if I hit Control again and I open up my console, we see true here. And this true refers to the only console log we have to this one here. So the $data object, this data object, is stored in our VueJS instance, actually still is this data object we set up here. And this is, by the way, another way of how you may initialize the data in your instances. You don't have to write everything in this object. You may also create that data variable before creating your Vue instance and then simply pass it as the value for this key value pair here. That is perfectly fine, as you see here. It works in the same way. And this is one of the key things I want you to understand. VueJS doesn't create its own enclosed world. It's normal JavaScript code, it lives in the JavaScript code, and it's able to interact with the JavaScript code around it. As you can see here, we can use a normal JavaScript variable to populate our data. We can access the instance from outside, like here. We can use the proxied properties of the Vue instance from outside. We can use multiple Vue instances. We can throw in normal JavaScript code with like this timeout where we then access the Vue instance data. We can do all of that. Of course, we want to make sure that we don't mess with things under control of VueJS. So if we control a part of the HTML code, like this one with VueJS, you probably don't want to access it with vanilla JavaScript code too, because you could mess up the reactivity of VueJS. If it controls a certain part there, if it renders something with vif and you try to access them with vanilla JavaScript code, you might access it when it doesn't exist or something like that. So that's something to watch out for. But generally, there's nothing wrong with mixing your normal JavaScript code and VueJS. You don't have to create a VueJS only application. You can always throw it in if you only want to control parts or if you only need certain things of VueJS. I'm just emphasizing this because it is important to understand. Whilst we will learn how to build VueJS only applications in this course too, right now we're still in the stage where we only are controlling parts of the HTML page. Keep this in mind. And that is perfectly valid and something you'll see in a lot of applications.